What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Worky Wednesdays. I am your host, Jesse, and I have some amazing guests sitting down with us tonight. Some people that go way back with me and truly mean the world to me. I'm excited to have Mr. Scott Kappes and his awesome son, who goes way back, man. We go way back together, Josh Kappes.
Good
Guys,
old days.
thanks so much for sitting down with us. I appreciate that.
Great to be here.
Really good to see you.
Thanks, Jess.
Yeah. So you're up from North Carolina, right?
Yes, you'll probably hear a little bit of a Carolina drawl.
I've had that accent there
Yeah.
from my short stint.
Everybody
military
always
stint.
says something when I come back here that I have an accent. So
Yeah. So my little accent that I developed over the years kind of morphed into this weird, Pennsylvania Dutch / mix of North Carolinian / military accent.
Yep.
So I can't seem to kick it, and I get picked on a lot about it.
yeah, you kind of don't fit anywhere now.
Yeah. And then and Scott, so you were an Allentown native, and then you moved up to the Poconos, and now you're back down in the good old Allentown.
Yep.
That's really good. Good to hear. So Scott, I really want to jump in and just have a good conversation with you. I've known you since I was 8 years old, and I'd like to touch into a little bit of that when we get to that point. But I really want to make this episode about you, and you have such a dedicated career, both in the name of our Father and also as a servant for the city of Allentown as a firefighter. So definitely want to touch into those two topics. But I'm also really interested, Scott, to find out where it all began. So let's start there, Scott, if you don't mind. I mean, where did you grow up around here?
Well, grew up on the south side of Allentown, over on South Ray Street. I was born in Sacred Heart Hospital in Allentown, and my childhood was an awesome childhood overall. If that sun was up, I was on the playground playing. We back then in that time, nobody was doing the video games with the thumbs. If the sun was out and it wasn't raining, you were outside playing. And we lived on the playground. And whatever sport was in season, baseball, basketball, football, we were up there 24/7. And I often tell people the movie script for Sandlot, I could have wrote the script.
Oh, yeah?
I could have wrote the script to that movie. That was my summer.
As a young kid, what was your primary sport growing up?
Baseball.
Baseball.
Yeah.
No surprise there, huh?
Yeah.
So, did you play for youth and then for schools, or was it all just for fun?
No, well, I started in Mountainville Little League at 8 years old.
Unbelievable.
And one of the things that lit my wick with baseball, I was super fortunate to have a great coach when I made it into the majors in Mountainville. His name was Bob Patton.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, the majority of the baseball I learned from that man in Little League. But that's how good he was.
Wow.
He taught us the fundamentals of the game, and he was an intense dude too. But he was fun, and he taught us how to field, how to hit, how to bunt, how to pitch. He had 3 boys that played on the team too, so you had the father-son dynamic going on where, as you saw with us growing up, I was so intense on
It sounds
Josh.
very familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, he was really intense on his kids, but I'll tell you, I love playing for that man. He was great.
Really cool. How ironic is it, Josh? This is the first time that I'm hearing this.
Yeah.
That's where I met your dad.
Yep.
Mountainville Little League. That's right around the same age as I was.
Yep.
The 3 sons, the boys. That's incredible. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's neat hearing that.
Yeah.
I actually like to get back to Mountainville sometimes. I do like metal detecting and whatnot on the side. I'll go back there and try to find coins and things from that era. It was such a good era in our lifetime.
Yeah. He's missing a piece of his ear somewhere over there on the Legion field.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I'm sure there's a good story behind that.
yeah, we won. We won a championship or something, and we tried to do the whole ice chest dump on my dad, and Big. It was an old cooler. It was heavy, made out of metal.
It was an old
And
Coca-Cola.
we thumped him right in the side of the head with the cooler, busted his ear open. He got a concussion. He's gagging in front of everybody because we just rung his bell. So if you find a piece of ear over there, it's probably
great.
his.
The latch went right through my ear, or the metal latch went right through my ear. They had to get a plastic surgeon to stitch my ear up and stuff like that. So yeah, it was
Wow.
It was great.
What a story. That's funny. Did you end up going to Deer High School then?
Yep. I played 3 years there. Didn't do so hot there in my career. We had our old coach. We used to Dick Tracy. We called him Fire Eyes. And you screwed up, man. He'd stare a hole through you. And it was hard for me as a player to relax under him, even though he brought me up on varsity as a sophomore. It's one of those deals, like if you didn't perform in 1 or 2 games, you were on the bench kind of deal. And much different in the summertime than my senior year playing at Mountainville American Legion. I knew center field was my position that year, so relaxed, and ended up hitting 5th in the league that year. And got an invitation to a tryout camp with the Cincinnati Reds. But got a don't call us, we'll call you from that camp. It
Gotcha.
was, I was in there. There was some guys that were far superior to me, and they didn't get a sniff either.
Right. I'm sure it was still an amazing experience, though.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It left me with an amazing gratitude for how good a Major League Baseball player must be.
Wow.
Yeah.
So after Deer High School, what comes next then?
Well, I played a lot of ball. I mean, I played baseball probably into my mid-20s, and then started having kids. And when he hit 8 years old, then I started helping coaching with him. That's how my coaching career got started. But intermittently in there too, when they got a little older, I went back and was playing fast pitch softball in the city. Back in my day, fast pitch softball men's leagues were super popular. The city had 3 divisions. There was 3 divisions and a church league in the city of Allentown. I mean, there was hundreds of guys that played it.
Wow.
And like nobody plays it anymore. As far as it's strictly a girls' sport anymore.
Isn't it incredible how certain things just poof?
Well, we had people
It's all
that
slow pitch
might
now.
remember the teams in the Allentown Patriots. They had a guy by the name of Ty Stofflet that threw 104 miles an hour. And Larry Berg was another guy. And those guys combined, they actually played internationally and they won a world championship over in Australia. They were just phenomenal. It was such a great sport back in the day, but it's gone now as far as men go.
Now, when you say 100 plus miles an hour, was that underhand or overhand?
That's underhand fast pitch, yeah.
He actually was at one of our banquets for Mountainville and pitched in the gym over at Mountainville. I remember that to this day, watching him pitch inside in the gym there, and it was unbelievable.
Like fire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Scott, just so I can absorb this, what year were you born in?
1955.
1955. Okay,
Yeah.
so my father was born in 1950. Okay. So yeah, I can imagine. So a lot of things change over the years. You've seen just every decade probably is just a drastic change year over year in terms of technology and everything else. You've mentioned that these sports have evaporated, which they have. And to your point, I now play slow pitch, and I enjoy it. It's like a 35 and over, but it's fun to get out there and do that stuff. Try to stay active as we continue to age. At what point, Scott? So you're in your mid-20s now. You're starting a family. You were a servant for the city of Allentown, an Allentown firefighter. What age did you get on the fire department?
Age 30.
Age 30.
Yeah.
Is that considered later? And like that's, yeah, 30 years old, huh?
It's, so to speak, it might be a little later to get on, but I started out actually. You asked me after high school. I actually missed a segment there. I came home from a Legion baseball game one night. I was 2 weeks graduated from high school, didn't have a job yet. And my mom says, get showered. You got an interview for a dental lab. And I'm thinking, like, when you think of laboratory, I'm thinking guys in white coats and Bunsen burners and test tubes. Like, what are you talking about? But it was about making dentures and partials and orthodontic appliances. So I ended up getting hired by a guy. He had a helper, young helper that was leaving, did his deliveries, and also learned some of the simpler things in the dental field.
Right.
And hired me. So I worked for him for a couple of years. Went into the furniture business for a year and a half, but ended back in the dental business again at a larger commercial lab. But by working in that larger commercial lab, then I ended up learning all facets of the denture making business. So I made dentures, partials, and orthodontic appliances.
Interesting.
And then I got to the point, though, money was always on the dentist's end. For the most part, they work on a markup of anywhere from 100 to 300% on the lab price.
Yeah.
And so I was in the business 11 years, and I was making $7.85 an hour. And my childhood dream was to be a firefighter, but I never pursued it because I was really a very average student in school, and it's very competitive when you take a civil service exam, and I just didn't think I could ever score high enough, but I really committed it to the Lord, and I literally had several hundred people praying for me. And I took the exam, took the agility test, and passed all those. And I ended up number 8 on the eligibility list. So the whole process from start to finish was about 2 years till I took the exam and then got hired.
Wow.
But that was a fulfillment of a childhood dream.
Very cool.
I had several fires near my house as a kid. There was a large junkyard where the Kmart was on South 4th Street. That was Huffman's Junkyard. They had some pretty big fires in there. And I was just a little kid, like 8-year-old, 9-year-old, when I saw the first one, and it just lit my wick. It's like, wow.
No volunteer firefighting, but so you were just you just seeing it. Wow. So for the your early to mid 20s into going into late 20s, you were
Dental business.
Dental business.
Yep.
And then you had that opportunity, and you jumped on it and fulfilled a childhood dream.
Yeah.
Really cool. You know, back then in us growing up, you know, if somebody would have asked us back then, what do you want to be when you grow up? For you and I, Josh, it was a police officer, a fireman, a teacher, a baseball player, basketball, whatever, football player.
Yep.
Might have things changed since then, right? Well, that's really cool. So you get on, you're roughly around the 30 years old. But at what point, Scott, did Christ enter your heart?
Well, that was age 16.
Okay.
That's when I made a commitment to Jesus Christ in my life. But I honestly would say, Jesse, it probably began when I was a little child. My dad was a very committed Roman Catholic and didn't miss church. He had to be like on his deathbed not to go. It was so ingrained in him. And my mom was Protestant, and she didn't really care for the Catholic Church. It really rubbed her the wrong way. And she took us occasionally to church, but that's where I'm saying it kind of started, though, because I can remember so vividly going to a Sunday school class as a little kid over at First Baptist Church, which was in 13th Street in Allentown between Hamilton and Linden. And I can just remember them pulling the curtains. They had subdivided curtains that made rooms for Sunday school. But I remember so vividly from that, Jesus died for your sins. And that stuck with me. And there was another church near our home, right near Roosevelt School. In fact, it was adjacent to it. But it was Zion EC Church, and we went there a little bit. But when I was 13 years old, we started attending Emmanuel United Methodist Church right on South Mass Avenue and South 9th.
Okay.
Right on the corner there. And I got involved in the youth group, really enjoyed it. And we would go on youth retreats twice a year. We go June up to Pine Brook in the Stroudsburg area. And then in the wintertime, we'd go up to a place called Harmony Heart, which I think is above Scranton. And it was my junior year in high school on a Sunday morning when the guy was speaking and asked people if they wanted to commit their lives to Jesus Christ. I did. So that would have been my junior year, 1972. And Basically, I came to understand, Jesse, even as a skull full of mush at 16 years of age, I really came to understand that I was a sinner and that I've sinned against the holy God. And I've broken his laws, but in the same token, I came to understand that his son paid the penalty for my sin on the cross. And when that clicked, I realized that I needed to give my life to him. And by believing in him, as the scripture says, you receive eternal life.
Mm.
And I've been walking with the Lord ever since.
That's a great story. At such a young age, that's awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah,
16 years old. I mean, yeah.
It wasn't without its hiccups, believe me. I was a teenager, but it's still the Lord was there in my life, undoubtedly, and it's just a growth process. And I'm walking with the Lord now over 50 years, but I still struggle with sin in my life too.
Right.
There's never perfection attained here this side of heaven, but am I a different person over these years, grown in the Lord, man? All glory to him. It's he's changed me in so many different ways, and through a lot of trials and difficulties in life too.
As a firefighter for the city, being away from your family, seeing probably some horrific things in life, surely your religion had to play an impact on your career. Plus, again, just being around many guys of all different backgrounds, ethnic and religious backgrounds, I would assume, and then just literally going out and seeing some horrific things probably in your long career.
Yeah.
How did having a religious background impact you as a firefighter and your career?
Well, I'll tell you, I was probably in my 4th year on a department when I approached the union and asked if I could serve as chaplain. Again, because of my faith in Christ, it's a rich faith. This is not a hobby, if you will. I mean, it's life transforming. And your desire as a Christian is for other people to come to know the Lord, but also to minister to people. So I asked at that time if I could serve as chaplain, and they said, absolutely, go for it. So with that came responsibilities of, if need be, performing funerals for guys. Over the years, the older retirees,
Sure.
they pass away, and I've been at so many funerals in my lifetime, but you also, that entailed getting memorial Bibles that you would give to the families when a firefighter would pass away, retired, and so forth. So took care of some of that. But just in general, trying to minister to guys. And, it was not without its difficulties. Christ said, they persecuted me and they'll persecute you also. He said, a slave is not greater than his master.
Right.
And, I had resistance to my faith. I've had times where I went on shift and there was water in my boots. One time there was a Coke bottle inside. Oftentimes my flashlight would be turned off while I was off 4 days, so I came in with a dead battery. One firehouse in particular, I knew who it was doing it, was stuffing pornography in my locker when I was off, stuff like that. So, and there was a couple guys that literally hated my guts.
Right.
I mean, they didn't hide it. But what I will tell you this, you could feel it at times. You'd walk into a room and like, oh, he's here. You could feel that tension. But a lot of that dissipated over the years because there are guys that do the Jesus talk but don't live it.
Sure.
But they saw something real in me because there were guys over the years that came down with cancer and even wives. And I would go and visit them and minister to them. And I think over the years, a lot of guys began just to respect me for that. They saw that there was something real, that I wasn't just, as that the term used on the fire department was hoggle goggle for religious talk. So that changed. I think I gained respect from a lot of guys, but there were guys that, they couldn't stand my guts. Yeah. And I even had it after I retired. I did a funeral for a guy, And there was the reception afterwards, and one of the guys that I know couldn't stand my guts gets a shot glass and takes it up. Hey, everybody, let's take a drink now because we're all going to hell. And that was a shot at me during that time. But that's part of it comes with the territory.
Right. And you've grown through the ranks on the department. I think you retired as a captain?
A lieutenant.
A lieutenant,
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
I went up 2 ranks. It started as a fire specialist,
Okay.
which was a newly formed position during my career, and then I went up to a lieutenant.
Okay. So, and how many years were you on?
22 years.
22 years.
Yeah.
So during that 22 years, that's at the probably beginning of your career. I think that's when I met you. Josh and I went to school together. He was a year or two younger than I was. Through mutual friends in the neighborhood, my side of the neighborhood was much older kids. So trying to fit in with the older crew, and it was I wasn't on the right track. And then somehow or another, we connected. And I always remember, Josh, you always saying, come play ball with us. Come play baseball with us.
Yeah.
Come on my team. And I never knew, you could just do that. And I remember you just kept saying it. And you had a crew of friends, and we all mutually knew each other. But I liked what you guys had going on over there. It was normalcy, so to speak. Kids going outside and playing. And we did that on our side of the neighborhood as well. But again, the older kids kind of had an impact on behavioral,
right?
So I enjoyed seeing what you guys were doing over there, and I think your persistency of the open invitations. Eventually, I was like, hey, I love playing baseball, and we caught up doing street ball and things like that, and then when you had invited me to try out for the team, and then so I ended up playing with you guys, and kind of got into the circle. And then that's really, Scott, when our relationship started. And your dad probably knew that he did know. I know he did know that, I wasn't the ripest apple out there. And but you guys, both of you, never gave up on me. Scott, you never gave up on me. Even when I came to practice, not in the best wit. Yeah. I tell that story. I told that story on one of the previous episodes, but I showed up. I was partying with the older guys the night before, and I showed up to practice. I always showed up. And you sniffed out, Scott, that I wasn't in my right mind, but you made me stay out there and sweat it out, and ended up being a really good practice. And but you never gave up on me. And then, obviously, what I saw is the relationship that you had with the other kids that you coached. Some of them went off to become professional athletes. Most of the kids just ended up staying in a good group of friendships throughout the years, even up until now. So that's something that I always took with me is both of you guys kind of having your hand always out there, even for guys that kids that were on the right track, and I always appreciated that. And then Scott, you and I, you sent me a couple letters in boot camp. We touched base even when I got out and I was living in North Carolina. I think we sent a couple of letters to me. So I always appreciated that. And on top of everything else, you really invited me not only into your house, but the house of the Lord. And I've never really been into church until both of you guys invited me. It was Cedar Crest.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the Bible, the fellowship, the classes throughout. I forgive me if I don't understand. I remember what it was called, but it was like on a Wednesday night. We would youth groups and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I even went on some of the trips that you had just mentioned that you went on when you were a kid, skiing and things like that. So it was definitely open and welcoming, and that feeling never left. Even as I went off and lived life, the feeling never left, and I always felt that we always had this strong connection, even every time that I see you or every time we go back and forth. So I'm always appreciative what you've done for me in my life. And hearing your story, it's like it's no wonder, like seeing what you went through and just hearing your journey and how you're turning around and contributing back to the youth as you got older.
Jesse, when I coached you kids, it started in Little League with him and just kept moving up with him. But then it just coaching became such a passion for me. Not only to teach the game, because I can almost give the games away. Give me a practice. I love to teach. That's one of my passions. Even when it comes to the Bible or whatever, I just love to teach. And I love to teach the kids the fundamentals of the game. You know how we practice. We repeated stuff over and over and over and drilled. But it was a passion for me, too, with you kids. If you remember, I used to call you what? You remember? I used to call you my babies.
Yeah.
You were my babies.
Yep.
Because I loved you guys to death. And that's the love that Christ brings to it. Because my passion was not only to help you become fundamentally sound baseball players, and I wasn't out to make you good guys either. My hope and prayer was that you would come into a living relationship with Christ, which is life transforming, as it was for me. But man, to this day, Josh and I talk. I was just talking with somebody the other night. I miss that. That was one of the greatest periods of my life. I coached around 10 or 12 years. And I might just possibly get back into it this summer again. I just loved it. And I loved you guys. And it was just, what made it so special too is when you got into the older teen years in coaching, you were now coaching guys too that really wanted to play versus Little League.
Sure.
Sometimes you're babysitting. But you also have more relationships with when the kids are older, when you guys are older. And I just loved it. I love interacting with you and the other guys.
Right, yeah. And obviously, again, just such a positive impact and just a great time frame, a great memory, and probably in both of our lives, just going back into that era.
Yeah. Winning was good, too.
Winning was
we won
good.
a lot of games.
That we did. And I think everybody on your team, Scott, was a skilled player, but not only at that position. Everybody was kind of like rotating positions. Everybody could play every position. And I think it had to do with you always doing those drills. I'll never forget those drills and playing this position, playing that position, and just consistency. It is great.
Yeah.
It's great going down memory lane and thinking about those days. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, I could cry sometimes. It was that special. It really was. And you remember the different things that we did. We always had like a kickoff picnic at the beginning of the season, and then we always had a banquet at the end. And we tried to get a good Christian speaker in. The one time it was the head baseball coach from Kutztown was our speaker. The other time, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was an umpire. I think it was a collegiate umpire, but it was a believer in Christ, and he shared his testimony. Everything, it wasn't just about baseball. It was about relationships.
Right.
And as a result, we were together, some of the guys, maybe 6 years. And then you had all their moms and dads. It was like we were like one big family. And they put up with a lot of crap with me because, I had that temper. And I wanted to win so bad. And that was one of my downfalls. That there was a lot of pride-driven anger when kids didn't perform and stuff like that. Because in your mind, that's an inflection on you as a coach. And that was a bad aspect that I grew out of over the years. But it was I put him through hell sometimes. I was downright nasty to him, and it was wrong. But he took it.
Yeah,
He could take it. It was like water off a duck's back.
I don't even remember it. Honestly, hearing you say that, I'm like, I feel like you were probably harder on Jeremy. I just don't remember it. The biggest thing I remember in what he's talking about is there was a game where he really lost it. And it might have been the game where you were climbing the fence, yelling at Ben McConnell, poor Ben McConnell catching behind home plate. And, he literally came up in my bedroom that night with tears and apologized for how he had acted and, really confessed that he didn't want to be like that.
Right.
He didn't want that to be who he was. And then it was either that year or the year after is when Ron Vining coached. And I can't remember if you played with us that year or not.
I played with Ron. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, ironically, I'm actually working with Ron now.
Oh yeah, wow.
In a ministry that we're doing together. But that year, we went undefeated, won the league championship, but like he really calmed down that year. Ron was helpful to that, and then I don't know if you remember the Treeses, but like almost all of the Treese family came to faith in Christ that year, and are still following the Lord to this day and involved in church, and so that all impacted me. I coach Sam's teams now. All of that stuff that I saw and all of that stuff that he just said, I have that same approach of relationships and impact, and we give athletes Bibles to all of our players, and you pray before and after games and things like that. I all learned that from playing with him.
Isn't it amazing, Scott, how you see it go full circle? Like you literally see it go full circle. Everything you taught your son as a young buck, now he's turning around and teaching.
I haven't won as many games, but
well, maybe that'll come in time.
Yeah.
But I think what people don't really realize, like you touched on, Scott, is that it's not really only about teaching the fundamentals of the actual sport. It's teaching life in general. And how do you both? How can I say this? Have you both ever got any kickback on bringing your open religion into your coaching?
No, I didn't. And, like I said, one of the great things that we had going there was that a lot of the kids, we were together for a number of years. So we were like one big family. Right. So, no, I didn't per se, not there, not like I did sometimes on the fire department. But, no, they were... parents, I think, were pretty receptive overall, and I think they just appreciated, like I said, he said with my anger and stuff like that, there were some times I was just over the top, and I don't even think I ever had a parent confront me with that. But I think because deep down they knew I loved you guys to death, and so they tolerated me with some of that stuff, but not really. I didn't have any pushback.
I'm in the South, so people are pretty chill with that. I mean, you'll find your pockets, but it's pretty welcomed, actually. First thing I did when I moved to North Carolina was go to the local high school and ask the football coach if I could be the chaplain for the football team, and, did that I still am. I've been there almost 20 years. I'm still the chaplain for the football team, and the door is wide open there. I mean, you have to be smart, we always frame things in terms of, this is not obligatory. You don't have to participate if we're praying or things like that, and just, be respectful. But same things, like some of the same things that I've seen happen with you guys, with my dad, where, different life events and things like that, you guys are coming back where, we've had former players ask me to do their weddings and, counseling situations and things like that, where they just need somebody to talk to, years after they've graduated. And it's been pretty cool to see.
Josh, what drew you down to North Carolina?
Some gal with blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah.
I met Jenna. We actually met in Israel. We were on a school trip together. We were both at Liberty University, and somebody paid for our freshman class to go to Israel. So we met in Israel, but we didn't start dating till 2 years after that, and she's from the Charlotte area. I was a youth pastor for 6 years in Virginia. We got married while we were still in school. We did student ministry there, and then her mom was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2005, and so we started looking to move to North Carolina to be closer to her family, and ended up in Conover, which is about an hour northwest of Charlotte, in 2006, and so we've been there since 2006. Yep.
And again, Scott, going full circle, your son is a man of Christ.
Yeah.
Following in your footsteps. So you pretty much outlined your journey. Where are you at right now in your religious career, if I'm saying that correctly?
Yeah, so I'm in a weird place, actually, because I was in student ministry for 10 years, so I was basically a youth pastor for 10 years. And then we started a church in 2012 with a group of friends, and So I pastored that church for 3 years, and then we actually merged with another church that my friend was pastoring, and he and I co-pastored for 3 more years, and then I started working for a nonprofit in Charlotte. So at that point, I came off of like paid staff with the church, but I stayed on as an elder, as a volunteer. And so that's actually, I'm still an elder with that church that we started back in 2012.
Wow.
That's our family, and that's been one of the coolest things that I've ever got to be a part of, is starting a church.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Having all these people that we love dearly and have journeyed together with for many years. And then so in that church planting process, I had to learn how to provide for my family, and so that's where we ended up starting our marketing business. And so I have my own marketing business, and then Jeremy and I bought a coffee shop January of last year. So we've got a little coffee shop in town, and
that's down south.
Yeah.
Where is that at down south? What city? What city?
It's in Hickory. It's called Emerson's Coffee.
Okay.
Yep. It's in a mall.
Yeah.
It's been in that mall for over 30 years. It's the longest standing coffee shop in Catawba County, where we live.
This is really cool.
Yeah. But then recently just started actually as the East Coast director for a ministry called Polestar Outdoors, which is we basically connect students with adult mentors who to teach them how to hunt, fish, camp, hike, horseback riding, any outdoor activities.
Right.
And the general idea is obviously we want to teach them the enjoyment of being out in creation and getting off their phones, but while we're in creation, talking about the Creator, and and so it's
what better setting?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the farther we get from creation, the farther we get from the Creator, and one of the main ways that God has revealed Himself is through His creation, and so it's a cool opportunity to get kids outside and just hey, where do you think all this comes from? How do you think we got here? So it's a cool story Ron always tells. Years ago, he took a couple of kids ice fishing. He's actually out in Wyoming now. So they were ice fishing out there, and he took 2 students with him, and one was a new Christian, and then the other one was not a believer at all. So they usually pray before they fish or hunt or whatever. So he says, who wants to pray? And the Christian kid was kind of embarrassed to pray, and so he didn't want to pray. And so Ron prays, and Ron, he's a jokester, and so he says, Lord, I pray that I would catch all the fish, and these 2 would not catch any fish because they were too embarrassed to pray. And sure enough, that whole morning he caught all the fish.
Thank goodness.
They didn't catch any fish. They used his fishing pole. They fished in his holes. They tried everything. They did not catch a single fish. So they take a break for lunch, and he says, all right, who wants to pray for lunch? Well, the kid who doesn't even believe in God says, I'll pray. And so he prays, and he prays the opposite. He says, I'll pray that we catch all the fish, and Ron doesn't catch any more fish the rest of the day. And sure enough, it happened. They caught all the fish. He didn't catch any. And so on the way home, that young man goes, do you really think God did that? And he's like, well, what do you think? I mean, that's what we asked for, and that's what happened. And he said, I believe that God cares about you that much that He would do something like that just to show you that He's real, and that He wants to have a relationship with you. And so he actually put his faith in Jesus that day on the ride home from going fishing. And
wow. What an amazing story.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Sounds fishy to me.
I like that. Josh, where do you see yourself in 10 years from now?
This might turn into a counseling session. I'm actually like I said, I'm in a weird spot. Honestly, I do believe in the next few years I'll probably be back pastoring a church. I miss doing that. The business stuff that I do is just a means to provide for my family. At the end of the day, I know I'm a pastor. I'll never get away from being a pastor. I love to preach the Bible. I love to do counseling and things like that. And so I think it's just a matter of time before I'm back pastoring a church again.
Yeah.
I love business like you. I mean, and I think the way that culture is going and things like that. I like the fact that I don't have to be dependent necessarily on a paycheck from a church. That I have other ways to provide for my family. But at the end of the day, man, I love being a pastor, and I really think that's the calling that's
Right.
on my life. So
Right.
yeah.
Interesting. Really, really cool to. I'm absorbing it, man. Just a great story, and I'm grateful that I got a chance to know you guys growing up, because just a great impact that you've had on me. And Josh, I see where you're at right now, and I see where you're going. The vision's there. It seems like you're streamlined, focused on giving back to the community. Essentially, that's really cool to hear. This week, actually tomorrow, is a very big day for the both of you.
The birds.
You two are Philly. Your family
Oh yeah.
is a Philadelphia teams family.
Junkies.
I mean, it's all of your social media posts over the years. All of them great posts. So 2022, the Eagles lost.
Yep.
To I remember you were upset. Scott, even when you were how upset you were when the Phillies lost the World Series. Is it just a local team? Anything personally tied to Philadelphia, to the teams, or it's a local team?
It's a local team, yeah. But it goes back. I can remember just watching on black and white TV, watching some Phillies games as a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, Jesse, one of my great fond memories as a kid growing up was sitting out on the front porch in the summertime and listening to a Phillies game with my dad on the radio.
Really cool.
Yeah, and we had this wooden box radio, and I can remember like summer nights too when you'd have heat lightning and you hear the in the radio from the static from the lightning. But those are just fond memories. But 1964, it was just great. The Phillies were in first place. They didn't have divisions back then. It was just National League, American League. And they had a 6-game lead with 10 games to go. And they lost, I think, 9 out of the last 10. And St. Louis beat them. It was this huge collapse. And that devastated me as an 8-year-old. That day, and St. Louis went on to win the World Series in 64. But that's when, I think it was 63, Richie Allen and became Dick Allen. He was Rookie of the Year. Or it may have been 64 was his rookie year. But, man, I can name all the players. Johnny Callison in right field, Tony Gonzalez in center. Oh, my goodness. What a great pitcher, Jim Bunny, who went into the Hall of Fame. Chris Short, another pitcher, Bobby Wine at shortstop. Bill White, first base. Just a great team. But that collapse, man, I was 8 years old, but man, that sat in my crawl. And you have the historicity of Philly being boobers and everything. I really think that 64 collapse had a lot to do with that city becoming sour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, are they going to become sour tomorrow?
No, not at all.
What's your predictions?
I'm predicting a 10-point plus victory tomorrow.
Do you have, if you were to throw out a number, what do you think the score is going to be, the final score?
30-20.
30-20.
Something in that neighborhood.
How about you, young man?
I'm pretty confident. There's something different about this team. 2017 was so weird with Foles, right? Like when Wentz got injured in LA, everybody's just like, that's it.
We're done.
Yeah, because he was the man, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
and
he was balling.
Yeah.
And Foles didn't look that great in the last few games. He really didn't look that great against Atlanta in their first playoff game. They just scraped by. And then he was just outside of his mind in the Super Bowl and in the NFC Championship game. It was just amazing to see. 22 felt like we should have won. They played incredible. They collapsed in the second half. But, like, when you look at I just see a determination and a hunger in Jalen and Saquon, especially. Like, I feel like Saquon is so hungry to win this game. You know, the team chose not to go after that record for this game.
Right. Right.
You know, to keep him healthy, to rest everybody up for this game.
Well said, Josh. That's exactly right. Yeah.
You know, and that was hard. That was hard. There's a ton of life lessons in that of like, you know, giving up on something in the short term for something bigger in the long term.
Life lesson.
And so just watching him, when you watch him in that first run against Washington in the championship game where he took it to the house, and he's just like, calm down.
Yeah.
I'm not done yet, you know. And then I mentioned too, Jurgensen and Landon Dickerson, Landon Dickerson's actually from Hickory where we live.
Oh, wow.
And watching them like battle through injuries and like have each other's back, like Jurgen's like, I'll go, you know, you can see him like, I'll go in when Dickerson's knee was banged up. And, you know, there's just something about this team. There's something special. I think they learned a lot from last year and the way they collapsed last year. You know, but in the back of my head though, there's the Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid factor, and Spags too. I mean, Spags is no joke, defensive coordinator. But I really do think, unless they just have some sort of collapse, that the Eagles should win the game by more than a touchdown for sure.
What are you throwing? What's your prediction? Throw a number out there?
I've heard a few scores like 34-17. I don't really have a score. I'll go 28-21.
Okay.
We'll go 28-21.
I'm such a fan of Saquon Barkley. My son went to school with him.
Yeah.
I met him when he was a senior in high school.
Yep.
I'm such a fan of the kid. I just think he's such a good kid, a humble kid.
Yep.
Love everything about him, and I just really want to see him win this.
I do too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like you said, Andy Reid. In my opinion, Andy Reid's probably the best coach in the history of the NFL, or at least will cement that legacy.
He's put himself up there, especially if he wins tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but
he ain't.
Yeah, going back to what he did with the Eagles when he was coaching them, and now he's pretty much doing everything with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to see Saquon do it. Definitely want to see Saquon.
It's wild that he's from here, you know.
Yeah,
right down the road,
and he's such a humble kid. Like, so that makes our area look good, you know. So we can all appreciate that of how much he's doing, how much good he's doing for the area, and how he shines for all of us.
Yeah, for sure.
Really cool to see.
Isn't it refreshing though when you see a professional athlete score a touchdown? It's not this. It's not this. He hands the ball to the referee.
100%. 100%. Even going back till earlier in the season, either week 9 or 10, when he could have broke his his own personal single season rushing record, he chose not to. Let the younger guys play.
Yeah.
Even that was an eye-opening experience then, because had he have played that game out and played out a few other games, he most likely would have broke Eric Dickerson's record.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't really think that he cares about it. The fact that he's not so focused on it right now is humbling, to say the least.
When the Eagles, with the tush push and everything too, he had a ridiculous amount of runs end up at the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
Still has, I think, 18 touchdowns.
Yeah.
His touchdown numbers would have been through the roof.
Yeah.
On, so you know, if we're not doing the tush push at the 1 yard line.
Sure. I think we all are on the same page. We all want him to eventually make the Hall of Fame. I just think that would, concrete his legacy. And, Andre Reed is another local that has accomplished that. And, but hey, we're in a new age, new era. Let's get a running back in there in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
I mean, Andre and I wore the same number. I didn't know that. I saw Diriff retired his jersey, and I sent it to my dad. I was like, "They retired my jersey, Dad."
They'll never forget me. That's classic. That's funny. Yeah, so it's going to be I'm anxious to watch it. I'm not too happy about driving down to Philadelphia to watch it, but
I'll be praying for you, man.
Yeah. Thank you. That's
to get you home.
Yeah. What happens next year with the Eagles? So let's say, what happens next year with the Eagles, in your opinion?
They're so young.
Mm-hmm.
They got plenty of cap space. I saw the other day they're at like $23 million in cap space. Roseman's a genius managing the cap. His drafts the last 3 years, first 3 rounds of the last 3 years are all starters on this team. they have one of the youngest, if not the youngest, defense in the league. I think they're right back. I mean, they're definitely contenders to go right back again next year.
Kind of seems like the same thing with the Buffalo Bills, a young team, and it seems like they're connecting the dots and are definitely going to be a contender next year as well.
Just the organization itself. I mean, you look at over the last several years, it's just a well-run organization. Jeffrey Lurie is a great owner. I'm so glad that my dad did not raise me to be a Cowboys fan. And that dumpster fire down there.
I'm with you, man. Nick Sirianni seems to be maturing as well.
Yeah.
Seems to be getting better every
I've
single
seen
year.
a lot of people talk about that. And I'll tell you the other thing, too, I heard on the radio, the toughness that Vic Fangio has brought to the defense. He actually was the one who talked Nick into hitting more, longer practices, getting after it more in summer camp. And I think one of the guys you see it in the most is Slay.
Yeah.
You know, Slay really kind of avoided contact for the most part. He's had numerous times this year. He's stuck his helmet on people, and he's had a phenomenal year. That defense tackles way better than last year.
Yes.
They are tougher. They're a much
100%.
tougher football team this year, and from what I understand, Vic is the one that
Awesome.
really has brought that to the table.
Yeah, they got some depth too. You mentioned youth as well, but you know they definitely have some depth
Everywhere
as well.
Every position.
Yeah.
You know, they're a little thin at end, and I think they'll probably address that this year in the draft. But other than that, man, I mean, the cornerback room is loaded.
Yeah.
Little light at wide receiver, you know, once you get past Devontae and AJ.
Yeah.
But
Awesome.
It's a good time to be a Birds fan.
They say the Chiefs defense normally goes 1-1. I don't know how you can do that tomorrow when you have someone like Saquon in the backfield.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see what Spag does for that defense.
Yeah, you got him to deal with. AJ's great against man.
He'll beat anybody.
And if these guys are running in man down the field, you got to worry about Jalen too.
Yeah.
Taking off.
Yeah, and then on top of, Devontae, they're so deep. They just have talent everywhere. So, hopefully it's going to be interesting. I'm not a betting man, but I like picking people's brains to see parlays and all of that stuff. But I definitely don't go down that road. It's doesn't interest me. I like winning money, but I hate losing it. So
yeah, for real.
Yeah, I definitely want to be respectful for your guys' times, and I appreciate you guys both sitting with me. Scott, I'm interested though, if you could go back and change anything, throughout your both personal and professional career, is there anything that you might alter differently?
You mean you're speaking fire department?
Yeah, fire department, or even add in a dose of personal life into that. Yeah, either or. Yeah.
Well, you know what? It ties into what I said earlier concerning my coaching and some of the tirades and antics that came out of me. Pride can be a real cancer. It really can. And that has affected me in many, many ways. I'll tell you what, I'll share a great story. I don't remember the years, the time frames, but it was probably in the first third of my career in a department. Was involved with a rescue. It wasn't anything dynamic, but we rescued a woman from a kitchen. The fire was in the front of the home, pulled her out, and we were not able to get the husband out. He was in the dining room area. We found him deceased later on. But fire department, we have the awards certain. They like to give awards, so we got an award for that. And then I was involved, I would say maybe a year later. It could have been a year and a half, whatever. But it was a fire right across the street from the central fire station, and we took 5 people out of there. And I laddered the side of the building and rescued a man and his black lab out of a second-story window. And I came home puffed up like you wouldn't believe, and Daddy's going to get another award. Daddy rescued a dog and a man, and da da da. We took 5 people out. And also, so picture this: the next award ceremony comes up. I'm the chaplain, so they would also have me do the invocation
Sure.
and the benediction. Well, the award comes for that particular call, right? So all these guys got awards for heroism, bravery, this or that. I didn't get jack squat, nothing.
Wow.
And then they have a unit citation. So when every unit that's on scene that participates in that, all the names of the guys from the units are in there. My name wasn't even. It was if I wasn't even there. And man, did God kick me in the stomach and said, "Now, now, where's your pride now?
Yeah.
If you did anything good that day, it was because of me in your life anyway." So
Right.
yeah, So I would say checking pride, and it is a difficult thing when things go good in a person's life. And Josh can attest to this, even in ministry. Like your church has really grown and people are coming to know the Lord, it can be so cancerous. You start patting yourself on the back like you did something. And I'm telling you, pride is behind every
Sure.
sin. Period.
Right.
And that's when it all started with Satan being cast out of heaven himself. It was pride. He said, "I want to be like the Most High God." And so that definitely would be an answer. Is dealing with pride and checking it at the door. Because, man, a couple times in my life did the Lord humble me,
Right.
really humble me. And that was embarrassing that day. And there I was doing the
Sure.
hoggle,
Right.
right? I did the benediction
Right.
and the invocation, all that stuff. I left there. I was ticked. I was ticked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you had a conversation, Scott, with somebody that was not a believer, and there was a conversation in passing, what type of advice would you give that person for them to think about walking away?
Well, just think about what has happened in the last 2 weeks with the airplanes, the jet crashing in Philadelphia and that tragedy in D.C. Those people were about 15 seconds from landing in D.C., and out of nowhere they were dead like that. And, we're living in a very secularized society now, very much more so than when I was a kid growing up. There was a great deal of respect for the Bible and church in general, and now there's so much animosity toward Christianity and just this secularization of our culture. But if God is real, then it puts a whole different spin on life, because where does purpose and meaning come from if there is no God? As the Bible would say, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. But if God does exist, we're going to stand before him one day. And so my advice to anybody would be, you have no guarantee that 5 minutes from now you're going to be alive. And where are you going to spend eternity if that should happen? And that's the most important question that somebody could ever deal with. And yet most people just brush it off because they could care less about God, or it's just an insignificant matter,
Right.
Or he doesn't exist at all. And my plea, I've lived my whole life, Jesse. I mean, you've tried to zero in on my faith. My faith is my life. And the reason it's my life is because I came to a point as a young man where I knew I was heading for hell. And and people really bristle against that. But if they only understood how holy God is and how unholy we are, and he has no obligation to do anything for us. He's not obliged for our rebellion to do anything. And yet he sent his son into this world. He became one of us, that he in turn would die in our place and absorb the punishment and wrath that we deserved. Then that's the essence of the gospel. So that's what I would say to anybody is, what are you going to do with Christ? And if Christ is real, I always like to pose it in hypotheticals so people can think it through themselves. If Christ really existed, if he really died for you, and if he really rose from the dead, what are you going to do with that? Because if that is true, then the other is true too, that if you sin against the holy God, there's a price that you're going to pay, and that's eternal separation from him. And that would be my message to anybody. And I'm telling you, you didn't know whether we were going to breach this subject or not, but, I lost a son a year and a half ago, and he lost his brother. And so I would say right now, too, I am very sensitive to death. When I saw those videos the night that the D.C. plane went down, and then a week later, the plane in Philly, it affected me because I was just thinking, in my mind, it's like, I hate death.
Yeah.
Death stings, because I lost my son. But there's just that knowledge, too, that there were souls that perished into eternity on those given incidences, and how many of them knew the Lord. What turns out, the one co-pilot on the American Airlines, I saw an interview with his dad. His son was a Christian. He knew the Lord.
Awesome.
And he was, he said, I hate this that I lost my son. He said, but my only solace is I know where my son is. He's with the Lord.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, just acknowledging the fact that we're all there's an end for all of us, no matter what.
Yeah, death is real.
And I think what happens then is how we live, depending on how we live our life. Yeah, what a tragic event too.
Yeah, and it really did. It really rocked me watching that. Again, because I have this sensitivity to death right now after losing Jared, and so when I see people dying like that, it saddens me, it shakes me, and of course it makes me yearn for my son. I miss him terribly and that stuff. But death is a result of sin. I'm drawing a blank, Josh, right now on the verse. The wages, Romans 6:23. The wages of sin is death. Literally we earn it, because of our rebellion against God. But it says, but the free gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. And that's the key too. People, Jesse, think that this is something that you earn. I try and live a good life. If you do a man on the street interview, you think you're going to heaven? Yeah, I think I'm a pretty good person. I think my good has outweighed my bad. But that's not the gospel. If that's the case, then Christ died on the cross in vain. There was no reason for him to die. If you could earn your way.
Yeah.
But it's not a matter of works. It's a matter of faith. The Bible says it's by grace, which is a free gift. So it's to be received. But as the Bible says, narrow is the way and few are those who find it, and broad is the way, or many are those who enter. Most of mankind rejects God.
Yeah.
Even in being religious. Because that's slapping God in the face. That's saying, you know what you did for me on that cross, I'll do it myself. I don't need that. I'll earn it.
When you talk, I'm mesmerized. I always just get mesmerized, even on all of our conversations through over the years. When you talk, I don't know, I just always have such a connection with you just through growing up. And when you speak, so I'm sure that's not only through me. I'm sure it's with anybody that you speak to, even through your church that you were a pastor of there for a while. You really relay the message, and I think your gift in doing so has carried on to you. When I hear you talk as well, you guys have that great connection, and you really deliver the message, and the impact of lives that you've both had, I think, far outweigh. I'm not even sure how to explain that. I'm sure just you've touched a lot of lives, both of you, in a positive fashion. And you mentioned the untimely death of your son and of your brother, and seeing everybody there to try to give you both some comfort. And the hugs and the messages. Hopefully that is just a little bit of understanding for everything that you've both given out. That's the least that anyone can do to give back, just to help you guys understand the impact that you've had on anybody. And I hope that I'm relaying that properly. It's I appreciate both of you guys.
We appreciate you, man. It was, obviously meant a lot for you to be there, and many of our, my teammates and guys that he coached were there, and it was a hard day, but it was a special day too.
Sure,
a lot of good memories.
Yeah, everything that we're doing here, I try to throw this out there. Everything that we're doing here is etched in stone forever. Now, you've already said so much, and you've given a great message. You have grandchildren that are growing up. I think everyone is going to listen to what you've said regardless. So normally I would ask somebody to, throw something out there into the network that's going to be etched in stone forever, but you've already done that. So I ask if there's anything else, both, that you want to say to anybody. Feel free to do so, and again, you as well. But Scott, you've already said so much that this is going to have an impact on anybody that watches this in general.
To my grandkids, I would say this is, we live in a fallen world, and there's always things that are going to grab after your heart for affection. And I just think of Jesus' own words. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And all the enticements in this world that can draw you away from God will never do you any good. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul? I love that verse because it's so profound. Okay, so you become a millionaire, billionaire, whatever, or just very successful. What good does that do if you don't have a relationship with God and you spend eternity with him? This life is nothing but the tip of a pin,
right, compared
to eternity. And the fact that I'm 69 years old now, I mean, I go back to your age any time, being in my mid-40s, and the Bible says that this life is but a vapor, and man, I'm living it. I can't believe that I'm to this point in my life. It was just yesterday that I was 16 years old.
Right.
But I would just say to my grandkids, love God and make him first in your life, and don't let the trappings of this world entice you, because it's only going to lead to destruction.
Awesome. You have a great dad, man.
I do.
I'm sure he's a great grandfather.
He is. They call him Pops.
The Pops.
They all love Pops.
Pops is going to be very happy tomorrow, and
I sure hope.
It's going to be a fun one.
I might climb a fence.
It's been so awesome having you two here. Thank you, Josh, for connecting with me and bringing your dad over.
Yeah.
I love you guys.
Love you too.
I definitely hope to catch up again in the near future, whether it's at a hockey game, we've done that already before, or just in passing. You're close by, so perhaps we can grab coffee or dinner sometime in the near future.
Absolutely. That would be great.
Thank you so much for popping in. Josh, I'm going to put your website information right here.
Okay.
We can try to spread your message, and anybody that's reaching out for any type of marketing or Google engine research or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
We'll definitely put your contact information in there and see if we can get you.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys?
Yeah, man.
Thanks so much. Love you.
Thanks, Joe.
Love you, man.
Love you too, man.
Worky Wednesdays. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.